You're listening to Men of Abundance, episode 94, with Scott DeStephanis.
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What's up, Men of Abundance? I am Wally Carmichael, your host and founder of the Men of Abundance podcast and fastly growing community. If you are brand new to Men of Abundance, this is your first time listening, welcome. I'm glad you're here. We are a different kind of podcast in that we don't just interview entrepreneurs, high-income earners, people that have something to sell, stuff like that. We are interviewing and we are having conversations with men and women and couples who are truly living a life of abundance in their own right. And we are sharing those conversations with you. We're sharing those kick in the gut moments. We are talking about what it took them to get out of that kick in the gut moment and to get to the point to where they're living a life of abundance and then paying it forward to you so that you, number one, can realize that there is so much abundance in the world today. All you have to do is open up your mind to be able to accept it. I know, that is easier said than done. I totally get it. But here's the thing. When you hang around the right people, you start thinking the right way so that you can live the way that those people live. So you've heard it before. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Right now, you're spending time with Men of Abundance. And if you want to spend more time with us, other than just listening to all of us have these conversations on the podcast, you can hang out with us at the Men of Abundance fan page, which is at Facebook.com/Men of Abundance. And men, you can get into our private Facebook group. Just go to menofabundance.com, click on the link up at the top that says members only, and scroll down to the bottom, click on the link. It will take you right to our Men of Abundance private community on Facebook. Click on that and it will give you access. By being in that group, you are going to find out first, and you're going to have an opportunity to be a beta group member of the Men of Abundance Society that is going to be launching very soon. I've been talking about this for a while. I've been getting the platform in place, and I'm absolutely excited for everybody who's going to be able to get into that group, especially for those of you who are going to be the beta members, because you're going to help the group develop so that together we're going to help men all over the world become the men that they want to be and live the abundant lifestyle that they want in everything in family, faith, finances, and fitness. So when you're ready to do that, go ahead and go over to menofabundance.com, go up and click on the members only tab so that you can get access to our private Facebook group so that you'll be the first to know when the Men of Abundance Society is ready to launch. And as usual, I want to afford you the opportunity to be abundant in your life today. And all you have to do is share this podcast and go over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. The easiest way to leave us a review is if you're listening to this on the website, just click on the Leave a Review button right under the podcast player. It'll take you right to iTunes where you can leave your review. Otherwise, if you're listening to Men of Abundance on your podcast player on your phone, you have to search in iTunes. Just go on your podcast player and search in iTunes, Men of Abundance. Even if you're already subscribed, they still want you to search for it for some reason. Search Men of Abundance. It'll only take you a second. And then click on the show art. It'll take you right in the middle of the page. It'll say leave a review. Just click on that. You can leave your review right there. It is greatly appreciated. The importance of that is so that other men can find these conversations and get out of it what you're getting out of it. All right, our featured guest today is Scott DeStephanis. Scott is a confidence coach that helps successful men achieve the relationships and money they want. With over 10 years experience teaching internationally, his goal is that men are fully living their purpose and have relationships that are connected and aligned. Scott is very interested in men getting connected to and expressing their deepest truth, and by doing so, create a purpose for themselves that provides a way for them to be fulfilled and fully expressed in their lives. Men of Abundance, it is my distinct honor to introduce you to Mr. Scott DeStephanis. Scott, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks, Wally. It's great to be here.
Did I pronounce your name right, or did I completely destroy it?
No, you pronounced it perfectly.
All right, perfect. Where are you at in the world, man?
Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Wonderful. One of the places I have not been yet. In fact, my wife is planning, every year my wife and her high school friends from Panama, from Central America, they plan a trip somewhere, and they've been to Vegas, New York, all over the place. And this year they're planning a trip down to Vegas with a couple, or not Vegas, down to Canada with a couple of them.
Oh, nice. Whereabouts are they going?
I'm not sure exactly. She just said, I'm going to Canada. So I said, all right, sounds good. There's a couple locations they're going to get to, because 2 of them live in Canada right now.
Oh, great. Yeah, well, one of the things I would recommend is definitely come to Toronto. It's the most multicultural city on the planet, and if you want to get a taste of, how the biggest cultural melting pot on the planet, Toronto's the place to see.
I love that, and I love places that are multicultural, with a lot of flair. And I like the whole melting pot analogy. But I used to be an equal opportunity advisor for the U.S. Army, and one of the analogies that I stuck with that I really enjoyed more than the melting pot, because I envision a melting pot where all the different colors come together and they all become one color, usually this ugly gray color. So I like the analogy of a pot of stew where you have celery, meat, potatoes, all your seasonings, various other vegetables and stuff, and you can still see that a celery is celery and the meat is the meat and the carrots are carrots, but they take on each other's flavor. They maintain their own personality, but they also take on some of the other flavors. So I just love that environment where people are doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually a great way to describe Toronto. So I think I'm going to steal that one going forward.
Too easy. I love it. Yeah. And so I like to start out the show basically the same way I start pretty much every single morning, which is with an attitude of gratitude. What do you have to be grateful for today, Scott?
I've got to be grateful for my beautiful wife and my as of yet unborn daughter. It's just a total joy to wake up every morning and have them in my life. And, especially my wife at this point in time, she's been a total trooper throughout her pregnancy, and I'm in complete awe of how she's handling herself and handling being pregnant for the first time. Excellent.
Yeah, it's a lot of new things. I've been there 3 times, and it's every single time there's something new about it every time, but that first time is just so exciting. So many exciting things going on.
Totally.
So I gave you a brief bio, and that really is just kind of what you do. Here on Men of Abundance, we like to get to know the person behind the greatness and the person behind the abundance. So let's get a little bit personal. We're going to get into that kick in the gut moment and that pivot point for you, but we really want to get to know who Scott is.
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. I've been married now for 4 years, and prior to starting my business and working with men, I worked for a personal development organization for the better part of 4 years. That's really where I got my start into the realm of coaching and personal development. Was very successful in that industry and with that company, and after 4 years, decided it was time to move on, and kind of felt the entrepreneurial spirit calling me. So after that, I helped start a company that was designed to create a new model for couples counseling. And that was my last corporate position, and spent the better part of 2 years helping to build that company. Unfortunately, the company didn't make it, but the model we used really worked with couples. And so I decided that I was going to bring that to my personal practice of working with men. And it was something that I was very passionate about. And since about 2012, I've been working with men in one-on-one and group capacities.
Very nice, very interesting, and I like that. And as we were talking before we got started here on the show, is this Men of Abundance community that I'm building has taken on a life of its own, and it's going in that direction. I didn't expect it to go in that direction, but it is, based on audience feedback and guys contacting me and saying, hey, can you coach me in living a life of abundance? And some of these guys pretty much already live a pretty darn good life by most people's standards, but they feel that they're missing that oomph. They're missing something in their life, and I'm more than happy to do that. So I'm excited to talk to you today because you're doing that. You're there, and I'm really digging it. That's one of the reasons why I gravitated towards you. One, because, like you said, with the entrepreneurial spirit, once that thing gets a hold of you, and then you get a taste of it, it's like, oh my goodness, it just does not let go.
Yeah, it's definitely been, aside from relationship, I'd say it's been the second biggest growth experience of my life. And when my wife is pregnant, as I mentioned, and once I become my father, I'm sure that'll displace them all. But up to this point right now, certainly it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it certainly will. There's no doubt that daughter is going to grab a hold of your heart and your mind, and just basically take over.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It kind of feels that way already.
Yeah, I'm sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So you've got a lot of stuff going on, and you just mentioned a few things about the company that you was getting started, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. But I really like to have this conversation with guys about the kick in the gut moments, because it seems to me that in many cases, and that's not all cases, but in many cases, people take that leap of faith and something projects them into that. And generally, it is a kick in the gut moment. That moment when you're kicked in the gut, you feel it, it literally takes you to your knees. And, so what we'd like to do right now is not highlight that, but I do want to bring it up. So if you could share that story with us, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the year's 2013, and I'm engaged to be married, and my wife and are planning our wedding, and the thing is we had been together since 2008, so we'd been together for 5 years before we had gotten engaged. And once we had gotten engaged, I was kind of old school and talked to my wife's parents and asked their permission, and they gave their blessing, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. And then we were scheduled to get married in mid 2013. And early 2013, her family just kind of started having these rumblings and misgivings about us getting married. And at first I didn't really think too much about it. I had thought to myself, okay, well, everybody's got reservations, and they're entitled to have theirs, but they kind of kept getting louder and louder, to the point where my wife started to get upset over the fact that they were having all these misgivings. And eventually it got to a point where I wanted to sit down and have a conversation with each of her family members, because I realized if we were going to get married, there was no way that we were going to get married without her family at the wedding. And my wife was like fully prepared to just be like, well, if they are not on board, to hell with them. They're not going to be with us. Okay, they're just not going to be at the wedding. They're not invited to the wedding. And that would have been kind of like the easy route for me to take, just to be like, yeah, okay, sure, we'll do that. But deep down, I knew that if I was gonna, I knew how much my wife loved her family, and B, I knew that our relationship was never going to work if her and I and her family and I weren't on the same page. My wife comes from she's Trinidadian, so she's got a very, West Indian family background. And if you know anything about Indian background, that the family's a very tight-knit community. And I knew that if, her family wasn't at the wedding, that would be something that would haunt us for the rest of our day. And so I took it upon myself to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to sit down with every single member of her family, and I'm going to hear what they've got to say, because clearly there's a reason why they don't think I'm the right match for her. And so I literally sat down with every single member of the family, and we had a conversation about why I wasn't good enough to be with her. And they brought up some really great points, and some of it was tough to hear. And, things like, I don't think you're smart enough to be with my daughter. I don't think you'll ever be provide for her. I don't think you love her enough. Some real things that they said to me that, as you put it, like really were a punch in the gut to hear. Especially given the fact that we had been together for 5 years previously. My thought process was like, we couldn't have had this conversation, 3 years earlier or anything. And so one by one, I sat down, I had a conversation with each member of her family, and at the end of it, thanked them for giving me their raw and honest feedback. And pretty much one by one, I essentially changed each of their minds. And I really changed their minds by just listening and not really defending myself to them. I really just listened to what they had to say. And so that brought us to probably about, 2 months before the wedding. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, everything's good. The wedding's all set up. And now, we've kind of overcome the hill here. We're over the hump. It should be smooth sailing from here on out. And 2 months before our wedding, my wife comes to me with all the same concerns that her family had. And that one was probably 10 times worse for me to experience her concerns from her as opposed to her family. See, her family was really just mirroring her concerns that she herself wasn't actually addressing with me. And so it was really like, my world kind of shattered at that point, because I had her for support going into all these conversations with her family. I sat down with them one-on-one, and we had conversations one-on-one, but I always had her as someone to lean back on and bounce things off of. And I was really kind of at this point where, I'm left to deal with this on my own. And, I had some great friends that I could talk to, but they weren't like in it with me, And so 2 months before the wedding, my wife and I are sleeping in separate beds. We're not really talking, and my world's collapsed all around me, and I'm not sure if this thing's going to happen. And so at that point, it was probably one of the lowest moments I've ever had in my entire life. Not to mention that during that time, I had just started my business, so didn't really have a lot of money, as you well know when you're starting a business and you're bootstrapping. So finances are low, and the future really does look pretty grim for us right now. I can't say at this point in time that her concerns aren't valid concerns. And I remember, a few weeks before the wedding, I sat down with her, and I made her promise me that there was no way she was going to walk down that aisle if she wasn't 100% certain that she wanted to be with me. And I said to her, don't worry about what the guests are going to think. If I have to stand up and tell everyone, listen, the wedding's not happening and I got to be responsible for why it's not happening, I'll do that. Okay? I want you to be free and clear to make a choice. And I'm going to do the work that I need to do to alleviate your concerns. And I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because if I don't, that's inconsistent with the man I want to be.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah,
that took a heck of a twist, because I wasn't expecting that, with your wife having your back the whole time, and then basically the whole time it really wasn't the family. They were just feeding off of your wife.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was, I didn't expect it either, by the way.
I'm
Right.
sure.
And, and so, it really took something. And, a week before the wedding, I essentially at that point reached out to, everyone I know. And luckily I'm friends with some, really great mentors and coaches and, teachers that really helped provide insight into, what was really going on for me. And I knew that if we were going to get married, something had to change. And the thing that really had to change, was ultimately me and who I was in the world. Because up until that point, my relationship was really about trying to get my wife's approval for things. Which is a big problem that I know I'm not the only man that's dealt with that. And I knew that if I was going to get married, if this relationship was going to succeed, if I was going to succeed in life, I had to break that pattern. Because there was no way that I was going to be able to, be successful in my business, be successful in any relationship, if the motivating factor that was driving me was trying to get the approval of whoever it was that I was with.
Yeah, very good point, and you're absolutely correct. It is certainly my experience that many people, not just men, but many people do.
Yeah.
They get caught up in that. One, they get caught up in a relationship and they end up staying with the relationship because they feel an obligation, and to society, to the family, even to the kids, quite frankly, which can later on, it's just a recipe for disaster, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Either you're going to personally implode or explode, or the relationship is going to. Certainly. So it's I commend you for being the man that it took to do that and to make that decision, because quite frankly, somebody doesn't look at that. Many people don't look at that as really being the man to step up and make that decision, but in fact it is. I have a very similar story with my own when I started dating my wife. Very, very similar to that. For many reasons. So, and I did basically exactly what you did. I sat down with the family as well, and it's for a whole nother story. But yeah, I definitely commend you for that. And what else did you get out of that? Because one thing that I get out of this that really resonates with me, and I want the listeners to pay attention to, is that you sought out those mentors and those leaders and those coaches and those men that you had in your life that you felt that would give you the straight answer and that would help you make that decision. Not that because maybe you didn't need help making the decision. You just needed some advice to make sure that the decision you were making was in fact the right decision. And it really, I'm sure it absolutely helped to have that there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably the biggest thing that I learned through the whole experience that has really shifted everything for me is to believe in myself even when nobody else does. See, part of the whole pattern, I'll call it, of needing, my wife's approval or my fiance at the time, her approval or others' approval, was that it was really just a mask because I didn't really believe in myself. And having other people's approval was a way for me to get confidence that what I was doing was right. And what it took was, having her family turn on me, her turn on me, essentially everybody that was really close around me kind of turned on me, so to speak, is the word I'll use, even though it wasn't really like, antagonistic, but lose their faith in me is probably a better way to say it, so that I had to generate that faith in myself. And the moment that it shifted, I'll never forget it. I the week before our wedding, I took my wife out and said, listen, I want to take you on a date. And I took her out and sat her down, and had a conversation with her saying, like, listen, I know who I am in the world now. I know what I'm about. I know what I can produce. And I know what's possible for our life. And I'm not going to live the rest of my life with you trying to prove that for you. You're either going to climb on board or you're not. And in that moment, everything shifted. Like, she just literally melted in my arms in that moment and was like, I've been waiting for you to say that for 5 years.
I'm loving it. I'm feeling that. I really am, because I can totally relate to that. You know, so many, I'm just really kind of lost for words, because it really does make that much of a difference to stand up and say, you know, have that communication. Now, I will say that you have to make the decision on where you want to go and what you want to do. In a marriage, I'm a strong believer that it's not that you have to ask permission, you just have to each be on board and your own level. So, for instance, I know a lot of couples, and this is myself included, that I'm very, very entrepreneurial and always have been. And my wife, not so much. She supports me. She supports me. She just there's certain things that she doesn't get involved in the business per se and stuff like that. So, and I'm okay with that. I know, but she supports me in that. And we've had this conversation. So it's extremely important to have that conversation, because otherwise what I see some people do, they will go ahead and they will run the business. They will do everything they have to do. They'll finance the business completely behind the partner's back.
Yeah.
And you might as well be cheating on them. I mean, you might as well be out with another man or woman. It's that serious. You think it's not, but it's totally that serious to do something like that.
Well, you know, I was going to say one of the things that is really, you know, critical for any relationship, I think it's kind of obvious, is trust. And if you don't have that on not just like a baseline do what I say I'm going to do level, but you know, on an emotional level, on a you know, spiritual level, if you will. If you don't have that in your relationship, that's going to slowly eat away and degrade the level of intimacy and the level of connection that you've got in that relationship.
Right.
So, you know, I think you bring up a really great point in that aspect where, you know, you definitely, it's not about asking permission, but it's certainly about making sure that you're on the same page.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One thing you do have to get permission from, then the one person you definitely have to get permission from and give permission to is yourself.
Totally.
You really do. I see so many people that have so much potential. They just feel that they don't have, they have, you know, what we refer to as, you know, with authors and business owners is imposter syndrome. Well, who am I to, you know, be able to coach somebody in doing something of this nature? And you really just have to give yourself permission to succeed, because a lot of people don't do that. Yeah,
I agree. You know, I agree wholeheartedly.
So let's talk about what you're doing now and how you really you gave a little bit about how you were working in personal development and whatnot with the other company and stuff like that. So what specifically do you do now for men in helping them build their confidence and living this life that they're striving for?
Yeah, totally. So I created a program called Man School, and it's a 6-week online program that's, you know, geared towards men, and the whole premise of the program is to help men become the man that they've always wanted to be. And it's a comprised of 2 components. One is live calls that I do every week, and the other part of it is a private Facebook group. And on the live calls, we cover topics that are really designed to support men in, you know, winning their inner game and upping their level of confidence. Okay, because so much of our mentality as men is drive towards, you know, having or getting that, focusing on the external things, you know, things like getting the money, getting the woman, getting the cars, getting the good looks, you know, shaping our bodies. And those things are important. But for me, one of the things that I found that is more important, I would say, is, you know, mastering that inner game of self. And, you know, you talked about giving yourself permission to succeed. You know, And this program helps men do that. And so we cover things like, integrity and masculine and feminine energy and discovering and living your purpose and, leaving the kind of legacy that you want to leave now after you're dead. So, it's a 6-week program. It's really comprehensive and, a lot of fun is the other thing I'll say.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, absolutely. How do you get men engaged in these type of activities and keep them engaged?
A couple things. One, I think it's all about finding, the right man for the program. I'm not interested in having the program fit the man. I'm interested in having the man fit the program. And, when you do that, I think, the men will keep themselves engaged because you're covering things that are relevant to them.
Right.
I'm not interested in the guy who, wants to chug beer and talk about the game. That's cool. I got nothing against guys that are up to that. But I'm interested in the guys who are ready to work on themselves, who are ready to take their game to the next level. And so, that's who this program's for, and that's who this program's going to appeal to. So for me, when it comes to keeping guys engaged, I write blogs and articles on these things that, they're going to be interested in.
Yeah, that's excellent. That makes sense. When you were saying that, I'm envisioning the movie Hitch, where Will Smith refused to work with the guy who just wanted to get in the girl's pants. Basically,
totally.
He was trying to get into the program for the wrong reason. And I'm sure
exactly.
you deal with that from time to time, because I do. I've had people contact me that I just have no desire to work with. Yep. Quite frankly, it's too easy to stalk people these days, and I do social media stalking. And when I see certain people, the way they act on Facebook, if they're willing to act that way in a public forum on Facebook, they're certainly not somebody that, I feel they need help. I just refer them to a different person that is helping them in that arena. It's not something that I'm willing to take on. Because of where their belief is.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing that I've learned, because I have taken clients like that on in the past, and it really never works for them or me. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I've just learned in my journey here is that there's a level of integrity that's required for both me and the person that I'm going to be working with. Mm-hmm. We have to have that baseline of integrity in order for results to get achieved, because otherwise it doesn't happen. They have to be at a certain point in their life. I've got to be excited and willing to be bringing my A game in regards to working with them.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. So I'm sure you've got quite a few good news stories out of what you've been doing over the last 10 years. I'd like to hear at least one of those good news stories, and then we'll get into the pay it forward round. Yeah, sure.
So probably one of my best stories, I'd say, is working with my one client, Peter. And, he was someone that I worked with, probably about a year or two ago, and was in a relationship that was good, not great, and decided that he was ready to take the next step. He was this, successful executive, and, wasn't happy with the way his relationship was, and specifically who he was in his relationship. And so, we worked together over a period of, I think it was about 2 months. And inside of that 2 months, I'll never forget it. We got on the phone one day, and he said to me, he goes, Scott, since working with you, every morning my wife wakes up and says, I can't believe that I'm married to you.
I love that.
Yeah, it was, it's just one of those moments where, I really got present to, the work that I'm doing and how awesome it is for, me to be a catalyst for him to achieve that for his life. But how awesome it is for him to be able to finally say that.
That's wonderful, man. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, Scott, we're going to pay it forward to our abundant leaders. You ready to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So give our men of abundance 1 to 3 actionable steps that they can take today.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I would say is start meditating. If you're not meditating, start meditating. I think that's the most overlooked and underused self-awareness tool that anyone can do for themselves. The second thing I would say as an actionable step is really start to look at and define what integrity means for you, and look at where you're out of alignment with your values. And the third thing that I would say, God, do I have a third one right now? I think I only have two.
That's perfect.
Those are those are the two.
And those are two very good ones. I agree.
Yeah.
What daily habits make up the biggest impact in your life? I'm sure meditating is one, but what else do you do every day that makes a huge impact in your life?
Yeah. So the second thing I do is I read. I'm an avid reader, and I devour just about everything I can get my hands on. And the third thing is exercise. You know, if I do those three things in a day, usually my days are, my productivity is way higher than on days that I don't. And my mindset, my overall experience of life goes up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Just vital. So speaking of reading, what are you reading or listening to right now that you'd recommend to our abundant leaders, and why?
Well, what I'm reading right now, Parenting from Within, given that my wife is pregnant. So I'm learning all about what it is to be a father. So the book I'm reading right now, which is by an author by the name of Dan Siegel, this book is all about essentially dealing with your own past experiences so you can better parent your child, and not shy away when your child has similar experiences. As you know, whatever you don't deal with in yourself, you're as a coach, I'm sure you've heard this before. Whatever shadows or issues or patterns that you don't break for yourself, you're not going to be able to help your clients through. Mm-hmm. And so this book is essentially taking that framework and applying it to parenthood. So I'm really digging that.
I really wished I had the insight to do that when I was a young man and having my first child. Women just have that instinctive ability to parent. And I'm overgeneralizing. I know there's a generalization there, but for the most part, in my experience, women have that instinct. Men, quite frankly, we don't. Most men do not. I didn't, and I still felt that I was going to be able to go out and hang out with my buddies and do all this other crazy stuff, and I didn't know what I was doing, and therefore it was actually fortunate for me at the time because I was deployed quite a bit. I was always gone, so it did make it easier on me. I wasn't there all the time, so it did make it easier on me, and I had that excuse to live by. Would I change that? Yes, that I would change. I would certainly change. If there's anything I'd change in my past, it would be to be there more with my two younger boys than I have been with my third boy, who I've been with, most of his, 7 years. Other than his first year, I was deployed to Iraq for 2 weeks after he was born. But my point is reading and getting educated from others or from books, whatever it takes, man, it's vital. No matter what you're getting ready to get into and what stage of life you're getting ready to get into, find an expert, find other men who have been through that, and learn from them. So it's just vital to do that. It really decreases the failure rate. And
I'm a big believer of, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to be learning something, and I believe you're never too old to learn anything, and you should never stop learning anything.
Absolutely. So I got one last question for you, Scott, and that is, what does living a life of abundance mean to you?
Yeah, living a life of abundance means to me, what that means to me is, having my relationship work. It means being a great dad to my daughter when she's born, and it means going out and living my purpose and succeeding inside of business.
Absolutely love it. We're going to close this up, and before we do, please leave us with a parting piece of guidance, any way that we can get in touch with you, and then we'll say aloha.
Yeah, well, I guess the parting piece of guidance that I have for everybody is, just that, never stop learning, and, as cliche as it sounds, never give up on your dreams and your ventures. I think that's one of the things that has been driving me all these years, is to, never admit defeat. And in terms of how you can get in touch with me, my website is mensrelationshipcoaching.com. And if you're interested in the Man School program, you can go to mensrelationship.com/manschool.
Excellent. And we'll have all of that linked up, and any of the links that we talked about in the books and whatnot. We'll have all that linked up in the show notes at menofabundance.com, complete with timestamps so that you can click on whatever little timestamp you want to go directly to that portion of our conversation here. It's all linked up there right at menofabundance.com. Just search Scott in the search bar. This episode will pop right up. So Scott, I truly appreciate your time, man. I love what you're doing. I see us collaborating and talking much more in the future in reference to helping men live their life, and as I say, live their life of abundance. And
Love
I'm
it.
just excited about doing that. So have an amazing day, dude.
Yeah, you too, man. Great to talk to you, Wally.
All right, aloha. All right, man, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I hope you got a lot out of that conversation. If you did, share this with other men, share this with other people. Even the women are listening to the show. Over about between 30 and 40% of our listeners are women. So don't leave them out. They're getting a lot out of the conversations as well. I look forward to hearing what you got out of this conversation, and you can share your feedback and get in on the conversation in our private Facebook community. And again, you can get access by going to menofabundance.com, clicking on the members only tab at the top of the page, then click on the join the community button and I'll give you access. Now go out and live your life of abundance and make sure to pay it forward.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.